Hoist the colors high.
Welcome back to the Modern Ham. Today I have something special. I have an antenna review. And this is an antenna that was sent to me by Chameleon Antennas quite a long time ago. And I will say that this video is long overdue. I actually reached out to Chameleon and I asked them about a possible antenna setup that I could use jointly in the military, maybe for some military radios or MCOM, emergency preparedness and things like that. And they suggested that I check out their Chameleon NVIS antenna. They sent me one, and I told them that I would, deploy it, let them know what I think about it, give them some feedback, and that's what I'm doing. So this is not a new antenna. I have deployed it several times now because I wouldn't want to talk to YouTube if I had never used the antenna, right? I'm giving you my opinions on this antenna, giving you some tips if you do buy it, how to set it up, and just what I think about it generally. I want to talk a little bit about NVIS without boring you. I'll try to make it quick. I just think that there's a bit of misunderstanding on the purpose of NVIS and where it fits in HF radio. Typically, as ham radio operators, most people's goal is to just try to communicate as far as possible. They want that sweet DX, right? They want to go talk to other continents. But in a natural disaster or emergency preparedness, you don't really want that. Typically, you're only talking to people within your region, within your state. You're not trying to communicate to people you'll never be able to reach anyways. You're trying to request supplies and things like that. So that's where NVIS comes in, which is the Near Vertical Incidence Skywave. So typically, when we use VHF, we use VHF, UHF, we have ground wave, which just means that the radio waves are traveling along the Earth's surface. We get that some with HF too, up to 8 to 40 miles or so, we can get ground wave communication where we don't really use the atmosphere as much when we're communicating. And we also have skywave in HF, and skywave is what your DXers like. It's what get our radio waves really far out there. We're talking like 300 miles plus to thousands of miles. But that just leaves a gap in between that ground wave and between the skywave that still needs to be filled. And that gap usually lies in the most important part of an emergency communications plan or a regional communications plan. It falls into the gap of about 40 to 300 miles. And that's where NVIS shines. The way NVIS works is you have a certain calculated critical frequency that changes throughout the day, and it can also change throughout the year. But it's typically during the day, maybe below 8 to 12 megahertz, and during night it's usually at least below 7 megahertz. But you can basically guarantee most of the time that your 40 meter band and your 60 meter band will fall under that critical frequency. Why that's important is if your radio waves, or if your frequency is above that critical frequency and you transmit, your radio waves will go right through the sky into space, basically, or they just keep on going. They don't come back. So NVIS works by utilizing frequencies below that critical frequency at a specific angle, right? So it's angled about like this, so that when it shoots off of the antenna, it will bounce off the atmosphere because it's below the critical frequency, and it will come down to fill that gap in that 40 to 300 mile range that we typically want to communicate on when we're doing it with a purpose. All that to say, I just wanted to make sure that we set that aside. This is not a DX antenna. It's not meant to communicate super far, so I'm not going to show off like me talking way around the world, which it probably would still be able to do. This is an antenna built with the explicit purpose of communication in a natural disaster or maybe even military use when you're talking within a region. With that out of the way, let's take a look at the antenna. So the first thing I want to say is they sent me this nice bag. I think I looked at the listing online. It looks like it's a nice little backpackable bag. It's got straps on it that come out back here. It's also got a handle here. I usually carry it like it's a briefcase or something like that. But taking a look inside, it comes with 4 stakes. So one thing that I forgot to mention is this antenna is self-supporting. You just need one mast, and they recommend 15 feet in length. As long as you can get that mast up enough to where you can get the wires staked off, the 4 wires on each side, you have a support. So you don't have to worry about guy wires or anything like that, which was really handy in the Vietnam War when this antenna became popular. It was originally known as the AS-2259GR. It was used in Vietnam to fill that communication gap. So, self-guying. Now, this comes, the way my antenna came was, I had 4 sets of wire. We have 2 shorter and 2 longer. We also had a string of paracord, and the instructions tell you how much to cut and tie onto each wire. The idea is you would have your balun in the air, right? And you have what would look like 2 dipoles crossed between each other. So you have 2 short wires going one way and one way, and 2 long wires, one going one way and one way, to form a type of X that is also the support. Off of these wires, you'll have a paracord tied on the end that isolates them from the ground and lifts them up a little bit, and the paracord would terminate on these stakes. You'll see in a moment what that might look like. But I've deployed this now enough to where I kind of have everything already connected the way that I want it to go. That way it's nice and quick. So, you know, if you look through the instructions, you can see how this is supposed to be set up. But on the top clip here, I have 2 different wires, one long and one short, and these will go in 90-degree angles from each other, basically. And I have 2 more wires. They're on the bottom part, a long and a short, that will go at 90-degree angles from each other. That way you have a straight short and a straight long going across. This suspension, we have an eye bolt here, which is used obviously to put this onto your mast, or if you'd like, you can use a paracord and an arbless throw to get it into a tree. But just keep in mind, they recommend that 15 feet is the sweet spot in order to hit the right angle to get NVIS working correctly. So that's basically the antenna. They did come with these really nice wire winders. I really like these quite a bit, and I definitely like the copper, I think it's the copper clad Kevlar wire. After deploying this for a few times, it didn't seem to tangle up, and it has to work as a support, so the wire's pretty strong too. And if you're worried about visibility, it's pretty dark green. It blends in. So if you're not trying to be like super flamboyant, orange or something, then this will work just fine. On the bottom, just the antenna connector there. Now I cannot remember if this comes with the Chameleon NVIS antenna or not, but they did send me their COAX cable, and I think this is 50 feet of COAX cable with the embedded choke. So this right here, I really like this cable. It doesn't tangle very well. It's very malleable, and it just packs away pretty easy. It's a decent coax cable. I don't know what else to really say about it, but that will be the cable. It's the Chameleon 50 feet coax cable with the embedded RFI choke. If you're interested, I'll put the link in the description. And let's see what else. So I think that is basically all that came with it. One thing off the bat, love the antenna setup. One thing that I took the liberty of doing was I took that PDF that they had for the manual, and I had it printed at my local printer store and had them laminate the pages with a spiral bound notebook. This cost me around $12. If I had any input for Chameleon, it would probably be to maybe try to start packing some field manuals for these antennas, because I know a lot of us that are using this like purpose built, it's really nice to have that reference out in the field in your bag. That way, if you're incapacitated or you can't deploy it, somebody else can deploy the antenna for you and help you out. So that's the only real feedback that I had. Other than that, the diagrams in their manual are very good. The instructions pretty straightforward. They offer recommendations on how to set this thing up, and it's all complete with pictures and things like that. So really good detailed stuff in there. They also have SWR measurements. One thing, this antenna is not going to be resident on all the ham frequencies. Due to the nature of the way it's built for NVIS, it is not built for a specific frequency, especially for MCOM use. A lot of times in MCOM you'll use ALE and other things like that, where you're just not going to have a you're not going to be on a specific frequency the entire time. So you do need some type of tuner with this antenna. I think the SWR is in between 1:1 to 1:4 on most of the ham bands. Could be wrong. I'll post a photo up, but you'll need a tuner for it. It's not a super efficient antenna, but it's going to be super efficient at tackling those NVIS gap there for regional preparedness and communication. So I'm going to go ahead and go outside, and I'm going to attach this to a mast that I have, which is actually just a painter's pole, because I don't need the supports, right? And I'm going to run these wires out and see if I can't get this antenna deployed. And then we're going to do a couple of tests to see if we're hitting that NVIS region. All right, so here I am actually several weeks later, facial hair and all. I just moved into my new place, so I actually have room to deploy antennas at my own house, so this is a good time to record. Let's go ahead and deploy that Chameleon antenna. I'm going to be using a painter's pole that I got from Lowe's for $15. My wife, my lovely wife here, is going to hold it up for me as we take the two separate dipoles, the short wires across and the long wires across, and get the stakes in the ground and get this thing deployed. So let's get to it.
Hoist the colors high.
All right, get it nice and straight.
Heave ho, thieves and beggars, never shall we die.
All right, I'm going to start putting a little bit of tension this way, okay? All right, looks like it's really bending that way, huh?
Yeah, I can feel it.
Okay, I'll fix it here after this last one. How's it looking now? If you were to let go of it, will it hold its place? If you think it'll support itself, you can go ahead and let go. All right, and as you can hopefully see, we have the Chameleon NVIS installed on the painter's pole. So just to show you guys, if you see that on the bottom, originally I thought maybe I could use that as like a twist down to do it with one person, and that plan didn't work out. But it's about 15 feet in length, which is what's recommended. And I have each of the guide wires are going down each direction at about a 90-degree angle to each other, and I have a transmission line from them that is about long enough to almost get to my little patio here. So let's check the propagation. All right, so what we have here is just the X6100, which I have set to 5 watts with an external bank just in case we want to try more. And I got a digital modes running here to check some propagation. And you guys probably aren't going to be able to see the screen, but what I'm going to do is attempt to exactly 5 FT8 beacons. Actually, I'm going to do 2 FT8 beacons on each band, and then I'm going to do 2 whisper beacons on each band, and then we're going to check the propagation. While I'm waiting for my whisper beacons to go off on all these bands, I just want to talk a little bit about NVIS one more time, because I think it's important to understand before we see the results of this antenna that this is, again, not a DX antenna. I'm not trying to talk across the United States on this thing. My goal is to target that gap in coverage that you can't get with ground wave and what you typically miss with ionosphere propagation with HF. What that really means is I have to bounce a radio wave. Basically, the first hop, it hits the atmosphere and it bounces back down and it hits that coverage area within several hundred miles. So that's what I'm looking for when I start looking at the results of this thing. I want to see exactly what my coverage area is, because I can get DX with a DX commander, right? I can throw up a vertical and I can get in Europe. And I can throw up a VHF antenna and I can talk down the street. But what I'm looking for is just that, you know, midway across the state, kind of regional communication.
All right, so we're going to take a look at the results of the propagation. So what we're seeing on the screen here is actually the 20-meter band of the FT8 propagation. I'm going to show you guys basically of this map here of 20 meters, the range of 300 miles, which is about where NVIS is roughly, from where I'm at, is roughly basically right here. This is about, I say I'm here in kind of eastern Kentucky, around here somewhere. This is roughly 300 miles. So NVIS is basically going to be around this region. And that might be a little bit more generous. This might be 350 to 400 miles, especially down here in Florida. But as you can see in the 20-meter band, the antenna did not hit NVIS, which is actually expected. That means kind of it's doing its job there. As in terms of NVIS, the critical frequency is going to be below the 20-meter band on the exact point of day that I did this test. So, but as you can see, the propagation did make it further out. You know, I was still able to hit other places, but that's not really NVIS. So let's take a look at what the 40-meter band did, which is more zeroed in to what we are looking for on this antenna. And as you can see on the 40-meter band, most of those propagation reports came closer to that circular NVIS region that I would be expecting to be trying to work with this antenna, which is that regional communication. As you can see, you know, I would hit somewhere in Louisville, different places local that I would be trying to communicate with NVIS. And that time of day, there probably wasn't anybody much on 60 or 80 meters. So even on 80 meters, someone over here on, looks like in Ohio, heard us. And this is definitely a NVIS contact, if I've ever seen one. It was on the 80-meter band, kind of right in the middle of the day, and it falls within that 300 mile radius that I was just talking about. So definitely below the critical frequency. If anything, that comparison in the 20 and 40 meter band on FT8 shows me that this antenna is doing its job. This is all NVIS in this region. This is all NVIS for me. So the antenna is doing its job. It's definitely getting into that NVIS contact range. It's definitely utilizing that first bounce off the ionosphere that's below the critical frequency. And I see that in the 40-meter band, and I see that in the 80-meter band. So that's expected. So all in all, the antenna did its job. This is the exact propagation basically that I was expecting to see. All in all, I really like this the Chameleon NVIS kit. I like everything from the bag to the coax cable it comes with, and especially the detailed instructions that are in that manual. If there was anything that was going to improve, it would be to ship a manual with the bags, just because in incom purposes, in natural disaster and this and that, it's nice sometimes to be able to just pass that book off to somebody else and say, hey, can you get this antenna deployed while you're working on something else? So if I was going to improve anything, it would probably just be ship the kit with the manual. The only other thing is the tent stakes are a little sharp. I worry about them maybe puncturing the bag. So me personally, I'll probably find some type of solution to protect the ends of the stakes. That way they don't puncture through the bag. But if I had any suggestions to Chameleon, it would just be to ship that manual and maybe something to put on the stakes. Other than that, the antenna worked amazingly. I can't really think of any improvements. This is a design that's been tried and tested out in military use. So we know it works. I saw the results. I know that it's propagating where it should. But as long as you keep in mind that this is not a DX antenna and this is a very specific purpose-built antenna for regional communication, then this antenna is going to be good for you. If you're looking for an NVIS antenna for natural disasters, wildfires, things like that, this is going to be pretty easy to deploy, and it's going to be able to talk to the people that you need to talk to, as long as you utilize a frequency below that critical frequency and everybody's on board with that as well. So all in all, great antenna, and I just want to say thank you, Chameleon, for sending me this antenna for review. I'm glad that I had the pleasure of deploying it in several scenarios and getting to actually field test this thing and kind of give my thoughts on it. So all in all, great antenna, and I appreciate everybody for watching. I also want to give a shout out to all my channel members. We're up to 10 now, so that's awesome. I really appreciate you guys. Jillian, Brian Lloyd, Google Must Die, Johnny E is what I'm going to call you there, Lionel Lenoir, Scott Pasternak, Hanil Vanderwalt, Van Flick, and Bart Killam. Sorry if I pronounced any of your names wrong. I'm giving it my best shot. Anyways, thanks for watching, and 73 to you.